first is going to be Miss Cheryl.
Well, thanks everybody for having me. I do have a little presentation. I was going to do it electronically, but then I did not have the opportunity to do that. So I've got copies of it here so I can leave those with you. But wanted to give you kind of a quick update on where we are. You'll remember last year we worked on a safe street study for 49th Street, and then we came out with some recommendations that the city of St. Petersburg endorsed, as did the city of Gulfport. We've been working with a really great partner in Forward Pinellas. That's the Metropolitan Planning Organization. And so since that was adopted and approved all late last year, right after we did that, the hurricanes came. So we did get a little bit of a late start in trying to implement some of the recommendations from the study. But where we are right now, this the bottom half of the first page was a recommendation for projects and phasing that we had come up with and that we presented to our city council. And so some of those I've got highlighted in green, and that means that they are underway right now. One of that is to pursue that lane repurposing study for the roadway to see if it works if we change the configuration of the roadway. So remember, right now it's got 4 lanes, 2 in each direction. For a section of the street, there's a center turn lane, but for most of the corridor, there isn't a center turn lane, and that presents some safety challenges, as does the speeding. And so the recommendation was for us to do a real detailed analysis as to could we repurpose one or more of the lanes in order to create some bus space and chicane the road a little bit and make some better crosswalks and those kinds of things. So Forward Pinellas set aside some funding, and they've got the consultant underway looking at that technical analysis right now. And they're doing it as a computer model. So we've gone and done some counts on the corridor at the signalized intersections, counted cars and people and all kinds of different things, and are putting it in a computer model right now, and analyzing it to see what happens if we use one of the lanes for something different. And so we expect that the consultant is going to have recommendations to us probably late spring, I'd say April at the latest, maybe early May. And then we'll know what would happen if we decide to change some lanes. So that was kind of a big part of the study. And if we were to convert any of the lanes, which we heard was a key desire of a lot of folks, the state law changed last year. It basically kind of mandates this study that we have underway right now. So we're setting ourselves up to be compliant with the new state regulation. So that's good. So that's underway. Should have some results, like I said, in a couple weeks, and I can come back to this group, May timeframe-ish, and report back and let you know where we are on that. The other one that is highlighted green is, it's a slightly different shade of green, mostly because it's kind of halfway done. And so what that wanted us to do is implement what are called leading pedestrian intervals at the signalized intersections. And what those are it's a slight adjustment to the signal timing to allow for pedestrians to get their green light, if you will, first, so that they can get out into the crosswalk and kind of establish themselves into the crosswalk before people start turning and doing all these other kinds of things. And so we have those implemented now at First Avenue North, Central, First Avenue South, near the Sunrunner corridor. We have them implemented at Fairfield, 11th and 15th, and it's only partially green because I'm still confirming whether we have it at 5th Avenue South and 22nd Avenue South. So once I can confirm those, we'll go ahead and check the box on that and move that.
Do you get good feedback?
I think so. I don't think it's causing any problems, and I feel like it is definitely, it's a proven safety countermeasure from federal highways as an improved safety, because it lets pedestrians kind of establish themselves in the crosswalk first before others start kind of taking over the space. So yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
So you guys never decided to do anything with 49th and 18th Avenue South?
So right now, it's,
I thought that's what.
yeah, that's part of what we're looking at. So right now in that computer model, we're looking at it both ways. We're looking at it as changing it to a traffic signal, and also what would it look like if it were roundabout. So we're doing that test on that traffic study to see if we could repurpose the lane on 49th Street, what would happen at 18th if we did it as a circle or as a signalized intersection. But we've not done a formal study yet to look specifically at 18th to see, because that one's got some geometry challenges right there, right? Because you've got the park, it's an odd intersection and there's very, very limited right of way. So that's one of the next studies that we have to do. But for now, we're testing that lane elimination or the lane repurposing on 49th Street to see does it work at 18. So that's one of our next steps. Okay. Yes.
I'm just wondering if your team was responsible for the changes that happened on Central up towards 66th Street, between like 60th and 66th Street. There's a widening and then some vegetation. It looks like a lane repurposing and then crosswalks. That's you, right?
Yes, so the city did that as a part of what we're calling our West Central streetscape project. And so it had a lot of utility work underneath it. And then it added those center medians and added new crosswalks. I think there's about 5 or 6 rectangular rapid flashing crosswalks that we added.
Yeah,
And
it's so well done.
between 58th Street and Park Street.
Yeah, so I'm curious about the one lane
Mhm.
repurposing. Does that have any flavor similar to that? I'm just curious.
A little bit.
Okay.
I think that one there, we basically just added center medians and added bike lanes. We didn't really even repurpose a lot of the lanes. It just feels a lot different and a lot slower and transformed because of the medians and all. Now that was a really expensive project, primarily because of the utility work that was underneath it that we did first. But yeah, it has been transformative, and we are seeing a change in the annual rate of crashes on that corridor too. The crashes are coming down.
So I was just curious if that's,
Yes.
if it's past the time frame for deciding on another study that can
Yes.
implement something like that over
Yes.
here.
Yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah. So, well, to be compliant with the state statutes, we have to do the study.
Mhm.
So we're gonna finish that up and get that rolling and get that done as soon as we can, and then start moving into implementation. And so that's kind of our next step, and that's why those other areas are in yellow, because that's our next step really, is to enter into agreement with Gulfport on an interlocal agreement for sharing the rest of the work that we can do on the corridor. And so what we can do right out the gate are some crosswalk improvements and those kinds of things, some raised medians here between 11th and 15th. And so that's that's next up for us, is to get into that interlocal agreement. And each of our municipalities allocated money in this current fiscal year for us to get going on that stuff. So now it's just a matter of us getting underway with that. And I think that we'll have that interlocal agreement or be ready to take it to our respective councils and commissions late spring, maybe early summer. Yes,
So
ma'am.
you say you got to do some studying
Yes.
before you do, yeah, because you're talking about all of it. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what, we be at that, we've been at that for 3 years now.
I know.
We've been at that a while. So
I know. And so that'll be part of what our next steps are. What we're trying to do too is pursue some grants that would allow us to do some of this like as demonstration projects and kind of like get something in there faster as a way of studying it, doing it as a demonstration with some, kind of modular infrastructure, and then going in and improving that, but going to get some of that modular stuff, quick build stuff in first. And so there's a program called Safe Streets and Roads for All. And so next time that comes open and available to us, we're going to make an application for that so we can try and get some federal support for doing something bigger. But yeah, the very next step on this process, because there was a lot to say grace over, is looking at 18th Avenue South. Yeah. Right here in the Inlet.
Gray space that you talked about, would they be vegetated? I'm just curious.
I think that'll be part of what we negotiate in the interlocal agreement, because we always have to kind of figure out who's going to maintain it, right? So I think if we can figure out who's going to maintain it, that's certainly my preference. I think when we were doing the complete street study for the roadway, we heard loud and clear that aesthetics were critically important. This is a business and commercial corridor, so you can't make it look like a highway and make it all concrete, but we are gonna have to figure out the maintenance aspects so that it stays looking nice, right? So I think there's precedent clearly from the West Central one, so it can be done. We do it elsewhere. We have it on 4th Street North.
Yes.
So I think it's just a matter of working out the details, but I would say from my perspective, like that's what I'm hoping to achieve, because again, it's a commercial corridor. It has to look nice. It can't look like a highway. So
Thank you.
defeats the purpose. Yeah. Yeah, Lenny.
So the things that you were talking about, the computer model, traffic lights, the roundabout studies and all that, who's paying, is that St. Pete and Gulfport, or how's the funding working?
So right now, for that computer model study forward, Pinellas is paying for it as a
Oh,
part
okay.
of their allocations that they get from the federal government. So far, St. Pete and Gulfport haven't entered into agreement to split the costs, but they both have allocated in their annual budget for us to go ahead and do that. So it's a matter of us just working out the details, getting a local agreement together and getting rolling. So yeah, Karen.
You know, okay, like, so maybe discuss this, especially in your question about, Central, which I think is phenomenal.
Mhm.
And, the other thing I noticed there besides running crosswalks is the parking seems a lot better. Like, I don't know what you did with the sidewalk and the parking and the curb cuts and stuff, but it's like, oh yeah, you can get in and out of here without feeling crowded or something.
Yeah, we did clean that up a little bit and kind of tighten that a little bit and kind of organize the parking a little bit more. And I think that has made a difference too. So yeah, that's definitely a possibility.
You know, trying to park on the Gulfport side or 49th.
And that's one reason why I'd like to do something as a demonstration project when we look at a lane repurposing, is that because if you repurpose it down to one lane in each direction, now particularly on the Gulfport side of the street, now those people are backing out into a single lane of traffic. And so that's something that I have a little concern about. So I kind of want to just, it'd be nice to do that in a way where if we find that there are unintended consequences, we can remedy that very quickly, right? That's what we would want to do.
So St. Pete's
Yeah.
maintaining that, correct? It's a private company.
St. Pete's maintaining it right now, but of course, right now, most of it's under warranty from having just been installed. So, and they're usually when you install it, you have a watering period and those kinds of things. So some of that's already being taken care of right now, but yeah, I think it's a good model.
50/50, St. Pete.
Well, and yes. So yeah, there are opportunities and we can figure it out, right? Like I feel like we need to have the conversations and figure it out because again, the what would be a terrible waste is if we just made it look like the concrete in a highway because it's just it's not serving your main street like you want it to, right?
Or push through an agenda that didn't really work, even
Yeah.
though the computer model said it didn't.
Exactly, right? Like it's still, computers can only tell you so much.
Yeah.
So again,
So one thing that Lenny and I both noticed is that, yep, 34th Street, very nicely, new pavement, very smooth, no potholes. What happened to the plan to do the traffic diet there with the bus lanes and?
yeah,
We don't
Yeah,
talk about
still-
it, do we?
still a little sore about that one there. So that one, we had it approved. It was gonna turn into a red lane and kind of start setting up for really good transit service on 34th Street. And with some of the state changes at the state level, including at FDOT from a policy perspective, they did not want to create that as a transit lane. And so now they've set some new criteria for when they'll convert lanes for transit, and they really have set the bar unbelievably high for amount of transit riders in order to do that. So that's not going to convert to a bus and transit lane. It would have had some really great impacts and that kind of thing. But here's the silver lining. The silver lining on this one is that through those conversations and discussion with PSTA has committed to and is going to introduce this really great new service called Spark. And that's going to have limited stops. It's going to have kind of specialized stations. It won't be raised like Sunrunner, but it starts to set the table for something better on 34th Street. And we probably wouldn't have had those conversations if we hadn't gone down the road of potential lane repurposing on 34th Street. So I always like to try and find at least a little lemonade out of lemons. And I think that that's it, right? Is that we're going to get a little bit of this new service called Spark, which Devin will tell you about in his presentation, I'm sure. So yeah.
I have one more question.
Yeah, of course.
On the 49th Street, the parts 49th Street that's south of 22nd Avenue. There's those two little teeny islands with the sad little tree, and they seem so weird. I don't know if they mitigate traffic at all. Why aren't there more? Why isn't like one long one? I don't know.
Usually, we are limited in how long we can make medians based on adjacent driveways. It's usually the driveway access that makes it a challenge for us to do that. So I don't know what the driveways look like down there, but my just first thought is that there might have been some driveway accesses that would have been blocked if they'd done something different. Our work on the study that we did and kind of where we're going with the project is really to take things as far south as about 24th Avenue South. That's kind of where the commercial activity stops and it starts to turn into a residential street. So, what things look like south of 24th is probably going to be, it's probably more of a city of Gulfport decision, but,
And
Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
that the city put those in there to calm traffic. That's what those were put there for, were to calm down traffic. And if you go much past that, you do have the speed bumps as you get a little bit further. So that was the whole point there.
Yeah.
Right.
It wasn't about the cosmetics as much as calming down the speeders.
Exactly.
It's very wide until it gets to that part where.
Yeah.
So then people have
Yeah.
to slow down, if otherwise they're hitting their cars on it and they learn.
Yeah, the context of the roadway really
I'm amazed
changed.
So that those streets are still there.
Yeah.
That nobody's hit them.
People going slow, they tend to avoid them, which is always good. So, yeah. But yeah, the context of the roadway changes a lot once you get south of about 24th. You kind of lose it. It turns into a much more residential road, and that's really the city of Gulfport. You guys can go for it.
Wrapping
We'll
up
figure out what's
questions
appropriate for you.
for Mr. Sticks. We're just gonna wrap up and move
Okay.
on. So any last questions? What I do have is that we're bringing you back in May
Okay.
for another update.
Yes. Yes, please.
I do have.
That's
So-
the takeaway.
I will be here, and I'll keep trying to come as often as I can. I missed a couple months, so I feel like I enjoy
Right.
hearing from this group, and you guys always ask really great questions. So I will be back, definitely in May and more often as I can.
Okay, wonderful.
This definitely proves the point of the necessity of Fusion 49,
Yes.
where we can hear different points of view from the city, yeah, St. Pete, Gulfport, and Fort Pinellas.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Move on to our next presenter, Debbie. PSC agency.
Hello, everybody. I do not have slides like Cheryl, but I do have maps.
All right.
I'm gonna bring some of these back here so that you guys don't have to turn your necks to them.
Yeah, bye.
And I'll hold these up on the table too, so you can see them better. So I just have my phone to make sure I don't miss any points. So first of all, my name is Devin Gill. I'm the Planning and Data Analyst Manager at PSTA, and I'm here to talk about our Connected Community Bus Network. This is a project that we've been working on for almost 2.5 years. We've conducted the largest outreach effort I've seen in my time at PSTA. And the first phase in the summer of 2023, we talked to about 6,000 riders doing origin destination surveys, finding out where they're going, where they're coming from, how they're using our system. We set up all of our terminals at Grand Central and Park Street, out there for weeks at a time, talking to riders every day and talking to them about this plan. We've sent out different surveys in different phases. We had hundreds of responses. We present this to all of our committees, and we have proposed some pretty big changes to our network. And the main theme of this is when you look at this map right here, there is a lot of lines on this map. And I'm not sure how many of you ride the bus, but if you're not a bus rider, this is probably pretty difficult to tell how to get where without really digging into it. So part of what we're trying to do, and part of why it's like this, is that a lot of our routes have been the way that they've been for years. We have bus routes, part of the Route 9, some of the Central Avenue trolley that have been in existence since before PSTA was PSTA, since the 1940s. We have looked at our system several times over the years. This effort occurs about every 5 years. But frankly, we don't usually do complete system overhauls as a result of this. We might take some recommendations and do smaller changes here and there where we can fit them in. But this time we're really trying to redesign the whole network. And it's not just that the lines on the map get more clear, but the service is more consistent. Every line you see on the map, hold this one up just for a comparison of how much more clear this one probably looks. This is a South County, but it's the same theme throughout the whole county. Every line you see on this map, except for these dotted lines, there's only 2 routes, is going to run 7 days a week. Right now, only about just under half of our system runs on Sundays, and a little over half runs on Saturdays. And I think most of us here know that people in our county aren't just working on Mondays to Fridays. They're working on Sundays. They're working into the night. They're working on weekends. And we also know that typically where the service workers are working, they can't really afford to live. They're working on the beach. They're working in downtown. And a system that doesn't run on Sundays or doesn't run on Saturdays or can't get you home from work at night, that's not really useful for the people who depend on our service. So what we're doing here is every route will run 7 days a week, and they will maintain consistent span. So we're trying to make routes run later into the night, not earlier into the morning. But part of that is that this whole proposal is cost neutral. We're not getting any new money. The state's not giving us any new money. No one's giving us any new money. So how we are making every route run 7 days a week and run later into the night is we're taking away some of our peak service on routes like the 34 and like the 18, where these routes will run every single 20 minutes at the peak times, like early mornings and midday. We're doing that because nationally, we've seen the trend in transit, and we also see it here in PSTA. Since COVID, there's less of a demand for that peak service Monday to Friday on weekdays. A lot of people, like maybe you work at a call center, things like that. You can work maybe a hybrid schedule. And when you would have rode the bus, 10 times a week going to and from work 5 times. Now it's maybe 3, right? And so weekday ridership has gone down in transit, but weekend ridership is staying strong, especially in places like Pinellas County, where our service workers are still working. You can't serve people drinks on Zoom. So they're working 7 days a week, and we are really trying to kind of shift our system around to work for the people who rely on us. So with that, I'll get into a little more of the concrete changes that we'd be making down here in Gulfport. So I'll show this map first right here. I did talk about how there's kind of a jumble of lines, and we refer to it as duplication, where you have several routes doing the same thing in different places. You don't just see it in Gulfport, you see it up here where there's several routes converging or going out the same place on the same streets, all over the county. You'll see when you look at this map, there's not a lot of places where you see those multiple routes going over the same place, unless they're kind of converging on a transit center or a transfer center. That does mean that most places in the county, you might look at the map and you have less bus routes. That doesn't mean the service is less useful or that you necessarily have less service. There will be less bus routes going into Gulfport, but in this new system here, you will have we'd have one route that runs from Grand Central, where you can connect to a lot of our system through and hits 49th Street from 18th Ave, comes down, circles through Gulfport at 58th. It'll take you to Tyrone, and then it'll take you all the way up to Largo Transit Center. You will have, we'd be changing the 52. I know a lot of people rely on the 52, so that's pretty important, but we would be replacing this section with the 49, and it would actually extend farther down on 49th Street. And so down here off 18th Ave, you could hop on the 49, and that would take you into downtown St. Pete in one-seat ride, or you could hop on the 71 and get to Largo or to Grand Central, or connect to the Sunrunner from either of those routes. We would also have a route running east-west in Gulfport, we call it the 24, where you could connect to the Sunrunner and go over here to Pasadena, and then also all the way to downtown St. Pete. So what Cheryl was talking about earlier with the 34, that's not exactly in Gulfport, but we're splitting the 34 into 2 routes. And the southern section, where the city and St. Pete have been partnering, we would have service every 15 minutes from Eckerd College up to Grand Central. And so I think now that I've explained kind of some of the thinking behind why we're making those changes, we also can measure how useful those changes are. And we measure that in access to jobs and services. And in our new system, an average low-income resident would have 27% more access to jobs. On average, our residents have 24% increased access to jobs across the system. And we took this to our board last month, and PSTA, myself included, stood in the lobby out there, and we talked to riders and the public as they came in and kind of walked them through the new system. And now next month, the board will be voting on these changes for implementation. And if they do vote to implement these changes, they will go into effect in October this year. And pretty much from the implementation in March up until October, we will be doing outreach around talking to everybody as much as we can, introducing people to the new system, how their trips might change, and how it could be useful for them. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions. There's also a whole county map over here. You guys are free to look at it if you want to pass it around, but yeah, happy to take any questions. You go first.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you
sir.
for the presentation. And the question I have is, I have two questions. One, will you be able to send that to us, or is that online?
Absolutely, yes. I can send it to you, and it is online on psta.net. I think it's the first banner you'll see is the Connected Community Bus Network. You can pull up the maps. We have all of our reports with the supporting data and everything else on there as well.
Awesome. And then the second question is, did you eliminate routes? And if so, I thought I heard you say that. Thank you. How can we find the routes that have been eliminated so that
Yes, that is
somebody needs to know?
Thank you. That is a great question. We have a pamphlet that we've been handing out. It's also on that same link that lists, because sometimes it's kind of hard to kind of quantify, because even if we're eliminating a section of a route, we might have then created another route that picks up the northern portion or the southern portion. So
Okay.
there aren't a lot of routes that we entirely eliminated because most of our bus routes didn't exist for no reason, you know?
Yeah.
So we maintained a lot of our service as much as we really could, but tried to reduce the duplication. But we do have anything where service is being eliminated. We have that on our website, and it's also in I should have brought copies of those brochures. That's on me, guys. Next time I come, I'll bring them. But yeah, we have that on the brochure as well.
Okay.
And then one thing we did, I'll give a specific example. So up here in this area of Clearwater, where you see this yellow box, we had a Route 67 that came here up Hercules, then over here by Greenbrier, and then came up the Countryside Mall. But we had like 10 people a day that rode that section there. And so what we did is, because we're eliminating a bus route, and there was a bus route there that people did rely on, we created, they're called on-demand zones, where you can call PSTA and book a ride, and they will take you to the nearest bus route or transfer center. So even if we are removing a bus route, I don't think there's anywhere in the county that is just entirely losing service that they had before.
That's pretty amazing.
Linda.
There,
Rideshare app.
you have the one map here that has the current day service.
Yes.
And I think right now they have the 79, the 15, and the 23, and the 14. And this, so as you were trying to explain, some of these routes have been combined. So they won't be exactly the same as they are now, but they basically follow the general configuration of the route. The PSTA was here in the summer, and they were presenting two totally different types of scenarios of service. One was based on ridership, where you concentrate on hitting where all the riders are, and the other one was based on trying to cover the geographic area of Pinellas. And I think this model is kind of like a combination of those. So under the ridership model, Gulfport would have basically had no PSTA service.
Yes.
And now we do have service. It's a half-hour service for most of, following pretty much the same routes.
Correct. Yeah, you're exactly right. What Lenny is talking about is, in transit, it's a common debate, and agencies have to choose, or the counties have to choose. It's called ridership versus coverage. In a ridership focused system, we would put all of our service on the major corridors. We would put everything on Central Avenue, on 49th Street, 4th Ave South, 34th Street. But if you live in a neighborhood, you have to walk half a mile, 3/4 of a mile. The opposite side of that is what's called coverage, where you try to spread out your buses as much as you can, even if they only come hourly. It's, it's like a lifeline system for people. But if you lean all the way into coverage, it's not necessarily the most useful. Where we've landed is we're at about a 60% ridership focused system. So about 60% of our service is on those main corridors where most of the jobs and most of the people are. And then about 40% of our system is coverage. That's getting people to those main corridors.
That was good information.
Uh,
So, yeah, it would be a nice thing to have, and I don't know if you're working on this or somebody is working on this. Some kind of an app where you say, I used to, I've been taking this bus to here, to here, to here, to here, to here, to get to work. What can I do now?
Yeah. So PSTA partners with an app called Transit App. It's a
Oh, yeah.
green icon with like an
Yeah,
S in there. We are going to actually partner with them and send them that new network about a month to 3 weeks ahead of time.
Yeah.
So if you're a rider, you can pop in a Transit App and see that new network and plan your trip on the new network so that you're not blindsided the day of.
Yeah.
We're also going to be doing a ton of outreach at all of the terminals, on all of the buses, everywhere that we can possibly go. We're going to be talking to riders and telling them how the system is going to change for them as well. So.
And my question just kind of goes to the coverage is because some of the routes are being changed or switched up and all that, the coverage is basically coming from where I forget the name that you call it, but where you can use like a Lyft or Uber to get to a bus station or on demand, yeah.
Yeah, in some areas that is considered coverage. So in a ridership scenario, that's not really cost efficient. You simply wouldn't do it. Ridership is all about maximizing efficiency. But in a coverage scenario, you value that lifeline, making sure that, even if you don't have a bus route, like you have something for people that need it. So that's exactly what that on-demand zone what that on-demand zone tries to accomplish is areas, we had it in Safety Harbor as well, but they had a bus route that when we had budget cuts a few years ago, we had to remove their bus route. So we instituted that on-demand zone in Safety Harbor, and we'd be doing a similar thing in this kind of.
So there aren't any in St. Pete?
No, in St. Pete, there's really almost nowhere with more than half a mile out service, except for maybe down here by Boyd Hill, where it starts to get a little more sprawling. Not necessarily through the neighborhoods, but even with consolidating routes, like St. Pete is still, most of the corridors in St. Pete have ridership. They're not somewhere that we want to take away service from. We might have reduced service in areas that had lower ridership, but there aren't a lot of areas in St. Pete that we took service from.
I'm sorry. And so is there still a phone number you could call to talk to someone about bus routes? Because I know there used to be.
But like the customer service or just like have a chat with somebody?
So I have an interview in Largo. How do I get there?
Yes, ma'am. If you call our customer service center, I don't have the number off the top of my head. It's right on our website. But they will talk you through that. Yes, ma'am. They'll tell you what buses to ride, how to catch them.
I used to call when I was younger. I was just wanting to know if it was still available for people.
It is.
Because I meet older people sometimes, and just to know that they can pick up the phone and make that call.
Yeah. What is your post-implementation review like? Is it as robust as the implementation?
It absolutely is.
Okay.
So we would have the routes in place. So we adjust our service 3 times a year.
Okay.
We would, it's on a 4-month cadence, and we would keep the system implemented for a minimum 8 months. So two service changes before we start looking at making changes, because I think most of the research in transit shows that it takes kind of a while to build up the ridership on the new system.
Sure.
But we would be doing the exact same kind of analysis we're doing right now, looking at how the ridership on the new routes is, if areas that we've maybe reduced service from, if the route that we put there is kind of exceeding ridership, we might want to put some service back. And maybe if somewhere's underperforming, we can move the service from there. So it's just as robust, and the work doesn't stop.
Great. Not many people do that, so great.
Yes, ma'am.
When you say next October, do you mean this calendar year October or 2026?
This coming October 2025.
And you mentioned being voted on soon. Is that happening at City Hall?
No, ma'am, it's happening at PSTA.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Just wondering if it was something I could.
Is it public?
It is a public meeting. I will tell you the day right now. It's the 3rd Wednesday in March.
And can you tell us how to get there by bus?
That's a whole nother bus.
While he looks that up, this is going to be presented to the City of St. Petersburg's Housing and Land Use and Transportation Committee on Thursday morning. Now it's a committee meeting, so there's no opportunity for public comment. But it is being presented to the city council members that are on that committee, so they get an update and understand what's coming down the pipeline.
If you would like to take the bus, you can take the 52. If you live on 49th and Central, a little north of there, that'll take you to PSTA. Or if you live down here in Gulfport, you can take the 79 to Grand Central and transfer to the 52, the 34, a couple routes that'll get you to PSTA. And it's Wednesday, the 26th of March, 9 a.m.
Any other questions?
Yeah, yes, I would like to say.
Just wrapping up.
Yeah, so there was a board meeting just last week, right? And I saw this, I'm on the PSTA newsletter. I would suggest that everybody would sign up to that. They had a notice about this. I went to the meeting, they saw these maps, and I gotta tell you, from what they were showing us this summer, these two different models, totally different models, and then what they're presenting here now, it's very impressive, the amount of public input that PSTA is taking to devise this and continuing with that. I had a hearing this week, actually, it was last week. And several people spoke, and all the board members are very anxious to hear public input. Go to the website, study this. It shows you the existing system and what this proposed system is. And if you go back to what the models were that they were studying and see how this evolution of the route design is, it's very impressive. You're paying attention to people. That's good.
Appreciate that. We're trying.
Yeah, so make sure, we really need to have representation on this March 26th hearing. Thank you very much for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Moving on. Next on the agenda, we have